Success requires you to develop three different areas: your belief system, what you believe about the world around you, what you believe about yourself, your discipline, character, and then your skill sets. To get from where you are, point A, to point B, the first point of breakthrough, there's a deficiency in how you see things and your mindset, your beliefs, your internal operating system, your discipline, and then your skill set, like how much value you're creating in the marketplace. What is going on, crew? Welcome back to the Founder Fires. Now, in today's episode, what I want to talk about is really what the cost of success, scrutiny, and expectations. What people don't tell you about when you make this shift to start building something bigger than you, and when you make this shift to start pursuing your dreams, that people are really encouraging in the early days until you start to really make it. And then what happens is you start facing scrutiny. So when you're getting some momentum in the early days, people have like no expectations from you, and they're kind of criticizing why you're deciding to pursue your dreams and why you're building this thing. And they're like, oh, are you sure? Like, that's a good idea. What if you do this instead? And everyone has an opinion about what you're doing in the early days, right? They all have opinions. They're going to scrutinize the things that you do. And God forbid you fail in the early days and prove them right. But that's the fear that keeps people from actually pursuing their dreams. And it's the same thing that I had to deal with in the early days. Like, the scrutiny was like, man, like, dude, like, why are you doing that? Why don't you get a regular job? Why don't you go back to school to get a different degree, or like all these different things? There's so much scrutiny. And then as you start making it, as you start producing some income, some revenue, some profits, and you start upgrading. For me, I was very quiet about how we upgraded our lifestyle. But then there start coming expectations. People start asking you for things all the time. Like, they start expecting you to give them handouts. They start expecting you to do things for them. They start expecting you to help them out. So that's where, like, if you don't understand what's going to come, then you can kind of be taken aback by it. But that's what happens, right? That's where one of my early mentors constantly talked about scrutiny and expectations. When you're doing something new and pursuing something different, you're going to get scrutinized. And then scrutiny is going to come in different ways. People are always going to have opinions. And as you start pursuing to make your life better, what you're doing as you're pursuing your goals, you're creating a gap between the status quo of the people around you and where you're going and where you're pursuing. Right. And this gap creates discomfort, and people don't want to be forced out of their comfort zone. So that's where a lot of the scrutiny will start coming. They're scrutinizing you, trying to bring you back. Like, hey, dude, just come out with us for the weekend. Or like, it's always like, anytime you're trying to make a shift to either improve yourself or better a situation, you create this gap, and that gap makes the people around you uncomfortable. And that's what creates the scrutiny that starts happening, right? Start scrutinizing you. It's like if somebody wants to start losing weight and they're going to cut out sugars, and then somebody offers them dessert, and they're like, oh, no, thank you. I'm on a diet. I'm trying to get healthier. And then they start making fun of them because they're trying to make themselves better, and it's making the other party feel uncomfortable. It's human nature. It's not malicious. It's really just human nature, right? So I go out of my way to encourage people, if they're pursuing their goals, if they're trying to doing something new and they're pursuing their dreams or whatever it is, I want to go out of my way to encourage them to continue on that path, because I want them to succeed, right? But it's only because I've been on the other side of that I know what that feels like. So I'd rather reach a hand to help them up than to try and press them down, right? So as you start experiencing success requires you to develop three different areas: your belief system, what you believe about the world around you, what you believe about yourself, your discipline, character, and then your skill sets, right? To get from where you are, point A, to point B, the first point of breakthrough, there's a deficiency in how you see things and your mindset, your beliefs, your internal operating system, your discipline, and then your skill set, like how much value you're creating in the marketplace. So there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. That's where that gap exists. And so as you start working to close that gap, right, that process of closing that gap, that is not a sexy process. That is a very boring and pretty ugly process. It's just not a sexy process. Like you're eating shit. You're eating glass, you're getting kicked in the nuts. Nothing's working the way that you want it to work. Like nobody wants to hang out with you. It's an unappealing process. Nobody cares about your story in that time. Right? So your story is uninteresting. You're the underdog and you're getting your ass handed to you. So during that phase, people are looking away. You're going unnoticed. You're going under the radar, and nobody is really checking in on how things are going. Right? You might have a few close friends that are following up with you and checking in with you, but even they are eventually going to stop checking in on you because at some point they're just going to get tired of seeing you struggle and try and grind it out. Right? So from point A to point B, that breakthrough point, that point of breakthrough, you're doing all the work to fill in the gap, right? The deficiency gap between where you are and where the breakthrough is. And you're doing the work to improve your internal operating system, your belief system, your mindsets. You're gathering information and you're learning, right? You're improving your discipline. You're having to work on your discipline, doing the things that you say you're going to do and being willing to do the work that's required day in and day out, no matter how you feel any given day. You're just doing what is required every single day. And then number 3 is you're sharpening your skills. You're learning new skills. You're learning how to create value in the marketplace, and you're figuring out how to become more valuable in the marketplace. So that period could take you legitimately 10 years to really close that gap. If you're really starting out, like, you got to be willing to work at it for an unreasonable amount of time. And you got to give yourself permission to be like, hey, it might take me 10 years to get to that point. But the cool thing that I've found to be true over and over and over again is it happens slower than you want it to, but faster than anyone expects. As you're in the thick of it, doing the work, closing the gap, like, it feels like you're just not making as much progress, but when somebody eventually looks back at you, they're like, dude, you've changed so much. Like, I don't even recognize you. It's because the progress time is happening differently based on your perspective, right? If you're in the thick of it, time is moving really slow. It's moving painfully slow. And you're questioning yourself. You're like, man, was this a good decision? Am I even is this even worth it? Should I quit? You're seeing other people who have put in the time that you're currently putting in now. They've already paid their dues. You're seeing other people seemingly be successful overnight. And the biggest mistake you can make is looking at someone's success, where they are current state, and comparing that to where you are, as if you guys started in the same place. They may have already put in their 10 years and you're just starting day one. They're 10 years in. And now they've reached that point of breakthrough and starting to experience the fruits of the labor and the time, the blood, sweat, and tears, and all the shit that they already ate previously. Too many entrepreneurs make this mistake where they see somebody reach that point of breakthrough and start becoming successful. You're in the thick of it where you're still figuring it out and closing that gap. And then you pivot to try doing what this person at their current level of success is doing. And you know what happens when you pivot to try and model what somebody else is doing? You start at zero. You undo all the progress that you just made to get to where you're at, and then you just restart over at square one. And so many people are stuck in this phase where they're putting in the time, they're trying to figure it out, they're learning, they're growing, but they're not making progress as fast as they want. And then they see somebody else celebrating their success, their breakthrough, their momentum, and all these different things. And they're like, ooh, let me try that. And then they start at ground one. And they stay in this loop forever, never making any meaningful progress, because at the point where it gets really hard, they're distracted by other people's success that looks easier. The grass is only greener on the side that you water and nurture. It's not greener on the other side. It's greener on the side that you water and nurture. And if you keep switching sides and you keep jumping the fence, you never reach a point where it actually starts to produce the kind of progress that you can celebrate. So in this early phase, this is pre-breakthrough. You're putting in time. You're closing the gap. There are beliefs, things that you need to change about your belief system, your internal operating system. There are gaps that you realize, areas that you need to be more disciplined, that you lack discipline. There's become gaps that you realize, like, man, like, I just suck at this. I didn't even know I had to learn how to do this thing. And you start figuring out all these inefficiencies, all these areas where you just suck and you just feel so inadequate. You just feel so useless. You just feel like you're just not, like, no matter what you do, you just can't get a break. You just can't catch a break. You have to stay the course. You need to hold the pose, right? One of my favorite things that I learned from one of my mentors, Taylor, is that your reality shapes and conforms to your belief system. What you truly believe about the world around you is what you're going to get. So if you have this clear vision of where you want to be and you're working to get there and you just feel like and as you're working to get there, time is going to test your resolve, whether or not you truly believe that's where you want to be and whether or not you truly believe you deserve to even get there. Time is going to test your resolve for the thing that you want. And so you have to be willing to hold that pose and say, know what? I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to continue to put in the reps under the bar. I'm going to continue to put in the work. I'm just going to continue to chop away at this tree. I'm going to continue to just do one step at a time, and just work on making the necessary adjustments to get better and better every single day. And then what happens when you just focus on doing the work and closing the gap is you eventually hit that point of breakthrough. It may be 3, 4, 5, or even 10 years down the track. You eventually hit that point of breakthrough. And at that point of breakthrough, you have momentum, the wind's at your back, and things start to feel like it's coming a little bit easier. Right. But up until that point, it felt like it just wasn't happening fast enough at all to you, because you're close to it and you're the one having to endure. But everybody else, because they haven't been paying attention to you, they've not been looking at you, because this early phase where you're pre-breakthrough, there's nothing sexy about it. All right. So they've been completely ignoring you. You've phased off into oblivion, right? Into obscurity. Like, they don't know who you are. And then once you reach a point of breakthrough, then people start noticing. Then the articles start coming out. Then the shout outs start coming out. Then the association starts coming like, oh, I didn't know you. How do you know this person? Or how do you know that person? I didn't even know XYZ. Like, all the work that you were doing behind the scenes when nobody was celebrating with you while you were eating shit, when nobody was paying attention, they start noticing after the fact, right? That's the thing you have to be able to combat, is you have to be able to pursue a goal without external validation. That validation needs to come from you internally, what you believe about yourself, where you're going, and the value that you want to create. You have to be able to pursue the goal without external validation. And then once you've reached that point of breakthrough, then the external validation comes. But by that point, you don't care. You're not getting any satisfaction from the external validation. You're just continuing to do the boring work. You're continuing to refine your internal operating system, make them better. You're improving your discipline. and you're creating more value for those around you and for the marketplace to continue to build, double down on the thing that's driving the momentum that you're experiencing. So I've been there. I just wanted to jump on and just share that with you. If you're in that early phase where you just feel like nothing is happening the way that you want it to, it's not happening as fast as you want it to. We've all been there. I've been there. I've shared pretty extensively about like all the losses that I've taken, losing 1.5 million in crypto, getting caught out of a $2.6 million business, going through several different lawsuits, almost getting bankrupt, going into really bad debt to try and keep my head above water. The amount of losses I can share with you, it is ridiculous. But nobody is paying attention in that phase. You just gotta be willing to stick it out. And if you're willing to stick it out, you will reach the point of breakthrough where everything else seems like people are like, wow, you made so much progress and so fast in such a little period of time. And it's like, dude, I've been working at this for like 5 years. What do you mean I made progress in such a little amount of time? For them, it was a time lapse because they saw you when you were struggling. They stopped paying attention to you because you were struggling, moved on with their life and continued doing whatever they were doing. And then by the time you reach breakthrough and they look at you again, all that time like collapsed. So all they see is a picture of you when you're struggling and you at your new state where you reach breakthrough and things are starting to happen. And they're like, wow, like that was like, how'd you get there so fast? Right. And it's just because of the perception. They weren't paying attention to you in the early days. That's what creates that time lapse. So I just want to encourage you, keep it going, keep your head down, keep doing the boring work, and do not get distracted by the success of other people who have reached that point of breakthrough at a different time than you. You don't know what went into their success. You don't know the kind of stuff that they had to do behind the scenes. You don't know the kind of hours that they had to put. You don't know how much internal work that they did on themselves to reach that point of breakthrough. You would be doing yourself a disgusting disservice by pivoting from what you're doing to follow somebody else because it looked like they got there overnight. No such thing. So hopefully you find this helpful. Go ahead if you want, drop your 6-word update on what you've gotten from this. And the 6-word update, essentially in the comment section, just write your 6-word in 6-word or less. What have you gotten from this? Because what that's going to do is act as a timestamp. Each time you potentially come back to watch this episode, if you're in a different place, if you've grown, if you've gotten better, you're going to get something new from it. And you can see your 6-word update as like a timestamp, like, wow, okay, I remember where I was when I first heard this, and this is what I was struggling with. So I hope you find this helpful. Comment your 6-word update, and I'll see you in the next one. Till next time, stay calm, change lives, not business on your terms. Peace.